You see all these things on social media. These women give birth to these babies. They'll write, my little bestie, born Tuesday, May 27th, 8 a.m. Your little bestie? You just met this human. How is it your best friend already? I didn't fall in love with my daughter until she was 6 weeks old. And nobody told me that that was normal.
Welcome to our podcast, where the rarely spoken truths finally get loud.
I'm Megan Nelson.
And I'm Pauline Walfish. And this is a therapist-led podcast.
We're naming the messy parts of life without judgment. Welcome to What No Mom Told You.
Hello and welcome back. I'm Pauline Walfish, and I'm here today with my co-host and our very special guest. So let me first introduce my co-host, Megan Nelson.
Hi, everybody.
And Megan, why don't you introduce our guest today?
So today we have Nicole Tropiano. She's a Long Island-based mom of 2 little kids, a former nurse, and a content creator who brings humor and reality to her social media audience. She's a fierce advocate for moms and mental health, and she uses her platform to share real-life insights around mental health, sobriety, and the reality of parenting. Welcome, Nicole. We're so glad to have you here.
Hi, thank you so much. It's an honor.
Nicole, you don't even know this, but we first met last year at the county event for maternal mental health. But before that, I had been saying, I wish somebody could talk about this or get her message out. And our coworker, Stephanie, who you know, was like, you have to meet, that the one. And I was like, who are you talking about? And then I found your platform and your name was Honestly Nick. And I was like, oh, that's cool, because we are always, as therapists, we're always saying, you're comparing your life to somebody else's highlight reel. This is not real life. As therapists, we hear what actually happens. It's not what most people are posting on social media. And so your platform was like, Honestly, Nick, and it was pretty real life stuff. So obviously that resonated with me. And then recently I noticed you're no longer Honestly Nick. So what the hell?
So it's so simple. It was Honestly Nick Goal. So I made that years ago because I realized that authenticity was my brand. And I had just finished nursing school. I was on a health journey. So I had goals. So Nick Goal was a play on Nicole. I very recently found out that a lot of people didn't get that. And so to have goal instead of goals, it was just strange. And I just figured that, now because I'm sharing my whole life, I am the brand. And I was so hesitant to share my last name on social media. But at the end of the day, people are going to find out what they're going to find out. And so I'm just Nicole Tropiano now.
All right. But you're still Honestly Nick, right?
Definitely.
What we say is pretty accurate representation of real life.
Yeah. There's only 2 things that I definitely don't share on here, and they're deeply personal. And maybe one day I will share, but I assure you that everything else that goes on in my life is shared on the internet, whether that be good or bad. It's incredibly cathartic for me. So selfishly, I enjoy it. But no, you get the good, bad, and the ugly.
I love it because that's real life, right? Things are not wrapped up in a bow. And if you could see the rest of my office, you would understand. I have never been somebody who's everything is tucked away and nice and neat. My life has always been chaotic. And I had a lot of shame about that for a long time. And now I just kind of own it. And it's been fun.
Yeah, my computer is propped on a pile of socks. There's laundry here. There's a pair of shoes on the table. My whole niche is authenticity and transparency. So I don't have to prep my house to make a video. I don't have to put on makeup to get my face on the screen, so I kind of benefit from it,
It's liberating.
It is. It is.
And so helpful. As therapists, we can only self-disclose so much. And yet I've been in groups with moms who are a new mom group, and they're like, everybody's thing looks perfect. And I'm like, okay, self-disclosure time. Look at the other side of my camera, And yet, we can't really do that the way that we want to. And so we can point to people like you that are like, look, this is the reality.
Yeah.
There is a reason why people want to show the polished version of themselves, but how much can you keep up with that? So that's
for sure. And it's exhausting. And I always say that social media is not real. It's fake. You touched upon the highlight reel of it all. And if there's like one thing, well, one of many that I can encourage people to do is to unfollow people and block them if they don't make you feel good, myself included. You're able to curate your social media algorithm. Do it so that it makes you feel happy and makes you feel proud of yourself. If somebody is on there and you're feeling shame or you're feeling like, oh, I should get that, or oh, I need to be doing that, get rid of it. It's all bullshit, you know?
Yeah.
That. I love that. Megan and I have co-facilitated an infertility group, and I've done it for years. And there's so much good content about fertility struggles and what that is like, because it's something that just happens so hidden. And I always tell people, you can create a fake Instagram account, have one for your infertility life, and then have one where you block any fertility related content. Like it is only cats and puppies or whatever makes you happy. For me, it's gardening. And then like have a separate one where when you want to go and get that support, you can see those videos. But like you don't have to be exposed to that all of the time. You just have to keep them separate because the algorithm knows what to feed you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what do you think resonates with people with your presence online?
So it's interesting. I thought about that question, and I think that it's not one specific topic. I think it's authenticity. And like you'll hear me repeat like authenticity, transparency, honesty, because it's really just how I live my life. And I think that regardless of what topic I'm talking about, when you're being honest about it, people can tell. You know, like I don't do double takes. I don't do, hey, oh my God, oh shit, hold on, I got to run that back. No, like you get what you get. I'm stream of consciousness. People know that. That's why sometimes I put my foot in my mouth. Oftentimes I'll double down, but it's what you get. And I think that that's what some people hate and some people love, you know?
Do you think you were always like that?
I think that I've always been, and I think that there's a negative connotation about what I was about to say, outspoken. I think it's just like outspoken is a way to like keep women down. Like, oh, she's an outspoken woman. Like, no, can I curse?
Yes, you can.
Fuck that. You know, like I'm not outspoken. I speak my mind. I'm confident in what I'm saying. Of course, there have been times in my life where insecurity has taken like the front seat instead of the back seat. But I have always been this way. I've just found a way, like since getting older and like having like tools in my toolbox of being in recovery and being in like deep amounts of therapy. I found a way to make it more helpful instead of like harmful.
I'm curious how that outspoken, because you still are a nurse, but you're not working right now as a nurse, right? But like,
yeah,
you did work in what I call corporate healthcare, right? Like,
so no, I've never worked as a nurse. I worked as a CNA. I worked as an EMT. I passed my boards when I was 7 months pregnant. I was like, maybe somebody will hire me. I've always wanted to be in the emergency room. I wanted to be covered in blood and guts. And then I had my daughter and it changed everything. And I realized that I wanted to be in maternal health care. But really fast anecdote, I was supposed to look for work when my daughter was 6 months old. Postpartum anxiety slapped me in the face, and it really was heavy revolving around breastfeeding. So we decided that I'll start looking for work at a year when she's no longer dependent on my breast milk. We started her in daycare, and for 3 weeks every day I got the call to pick her up because she cried and screamed until she threw up. So at week 3, my husband and I looked at each other and we said, I guess I'm a stay-at-home mom now. And that is the story of how I never worked as a nurse.
yeah, maybe one day.
Yeah. Do you still want to?
100%. Of course I do. And I want to help moms. And we've always spoken about me going into midwifery or lactation. The thing with midwifery is to even qualify for midwifery school, I have to have a certain amount of hours as a nurse. So I don't know if I'll ever want to be in the emergency room covered in blood and guts. I like chaos. So that's why I always wanted that. Maybe when my kids are in school and it's like I could work a 12-hour shift and nobody needs to be breastfed, but I 100% want to use this education that I fought tooth and nail to be a straight A nursing student. So I definitely will be a nurse.
Straight A nurse.
I know it was very important to me, but I had no kids. Well, towards the end, getting my bachelor's, I had my daughter, but no, I had no kids. We were not married and never care in the world. So I was able to do that.
So your platform, you talk about maternal mental health. Like you just said, you went through postpartum anxiety, and that was a new experience for you. Like something that happened after you gave birth to your daughter. Is that true?
So I've always spoken about mental health. I have multiple mental illnesses. I always have. It just not resonated. It became more important to me after having my daughter and experiencing like a PMAD, a perinatal mood and anxiety disorder, because mental health in general, mental illness is not spoken about, but women birthing people after having a child are so vulnerable, to me, so much more vulnerable than like the regular person before becoming a mother. So it's just become like I've become more passionate about speaking about it, but I've always spoken about mental health.
Yeah. So you had depression and anxiety before you got pregnant.
Correct. And bipolar too.
Okay. And did you have symptoms during your pregnancy, or just for you, it was postpartum?
I did. So I had anxiety during my pregnancy. Right before I got pregnant, I was with a psychiatrist, a psych NP, who told me that when I got pregnant, I had to come off all my medication. She was not educated. She
Well,
could
that
have
breaks
killed.
my heart. But and it's not the first time. We hear it all the time. And every time I'm like, oh.
Knowing what I know now, at the end of the day, she could have killed me. It was a perfect storm. My insurance switched right before I got pregnant. So I was no longer seeing that psych NP. My PCP was comfortable prescribing my medication. So I was doing that for a little bit. And then I got pregnant and I wasn't under the care of anybody. And so I found another PCP and I said, listen, I was with a psych NP. She said, I have to come off all my meds. I'm pregnant. Can you help me wean off my meds? And she did. She also wasn't well-versed in maternal mental health. And I came off on my medication and I wanted to kill myself. And not like, oh my God, I'm going to kill myself. Like, no, I wanted to end my life because I have clinically diagnosed imbalances of chemicals in my brain. And I need chemicals like psychiatric medication to balance them out. And I was not ingesting them. And I wanted to end my life. And I was driving to nursing school one day. It chokes me up because I can't imagine how many people go through this. And I was driving on a bridge and I said, what happens if I just drive off this bridge? And I always describe it as dark thoughts. And I knew that when I get those dark thoughts, I'm in a really bad place. And so I went home and I told my husband, and by the grace of God, he knew that we needed to jump into action. And I found a crisis center and a psych NP who was well-versed in maternal mental health, and she could take me, but not for another month. So I went to the crisis center. She said, I recommend these pregnancy drugs. And I started on them again. And I was on the up and up. Thank God.
Yeah. And even now, like, look how much it still brings up for you.
Yeah, because there are people who don't know how to get help and they take their own lives. And like, it doesn't have to be like that. There are answers and there are resources. And the only reason I knew to do what I did was because I've been in recovery for so long and been on mental health medications for so long. But like, that's not everybody's story, you know?
We talk about this like you had so much information already. Like you were a nurse, you had health insurance, you had, you know,
Support.
support. And yet it still was falling through the cracks. And that's why I know for myself, for Pauline, for the other women that do this, that we think we talk about it and we don't talk about it enough. And there's never going to be enough. And we're going to just keep on because you're right. It's like you had all of these resources and yet it can still happen.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
we know that people who have had depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, PTSD before pregnancy are at really high risk for having a perinatal mood and anxiety disorder in pregnancy and postpartum. And you mentioned bipolar too. And having a bipolar disorder not only puts you at high risk for having a PMAD, like it puts you at high risk for having psychosis, which is an emergency, right?
Yeah.
Depression, suicidality are an emergency also, but psychosis is always like, so did that happen to you also? Where like maybe you were hearing voices or seeing things or feeling like people were trying to hurt you?
No, thank God. And I could just cry this whole time.
Yeah.
So no, so thank God I didn't have any psychosis, but because I was with a really intelligent practitioner, she warned me of all this and we spoke about how I needed a certain amount of sleep in order to prevent psychosis. And that was really scary to me because psychosis is the one that's not spoken about, but it's the one that you hear about in the newspapers.
100%. It's the one, oh, why didn't they get help? And people call it postpartum depression, and it's not. Yeah.
No, and people are in these states of, delusion and hallucinations, and some of them are on medications. There was recently one in the past 3 or 4 years since having my daughter. I remember, like psychosis is the reason that people kill their children and themselves because they don't know any better. And some people can look at it with judgment and say, how could you do that? And like ask somebody with mental illness, like, I understand how that happens. Let's just fucking throw this out here, right? People hear about shaken baby syndrome and how could you ever do that? And I understand why babies are shaken. It takes one moment of irrational thinking because you're exhausted because your baby won't stop crying. Perhaps they're colic. You have no support. You're underprivileged. You have no resources. And it takes one like, stop crying. And that's shaken baby syndrome. That's why they teach you before you leave the hospital, put the baby down on the floor, put the baby down on the crib and walk away. But in the moment, it's not that easy. So when we have empathy or you have the ability to look within yourself and say, that could be me without judgment, like things make sense,
I remember when my oldest was a baby, and I still can see myself sitting on the couch and being like, this is how shaken baby syndrome happens because
For sure.
we will not stop crying. And like, I could totally see wanting to shake him right now, like, just stop crying.
Yeah.
I was still, and I also had support. My husband was there. There were lots of people caring for me. I didn't have postpartum depression or anxiety. I was just a normal mom with a baby that didn't stop crying. I still remember like, oh, this moment, this is how this happens.
Yeah.
I want to add something about postpartum psychosis because I don't want it to go unsaid, right? Like not everybody who has psychosis in pregnancy winds up in the news, right? Yes, it is big and scary. And yes, you are at big risk for hurting yourself, hurting your baby, doing something tragic, but it's also treatable. Like,
sure,
people get help. And if people know about it and we don't stigmatize it and we talk about it like a thing that we just have to treat because the chemicals in your brain aren't working correctly, it doesn't have to be that these women wind up in the newspaper. Right?
No, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't necessarily happen like that. You don't just snap into, perhaps you hear something, perhaps you become a little paranoid, perhaps you're not able to sleep or you're sleeping a little more. Like there are warning signs which aren't spoken about. Like they teach you to put your baby on the floor when you leave the hospital. They don't teach you about symptoms of PMADs.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's take a second, Pauline, if I can put you on the spot, and can you talk about the warning signs or
psychosis?
For psychosis.
Everybody's different. And this applies to whether we're talking about depression or OCD, like everybody's symptoms are different. So for some people who have psychosis, it is a pretty like you were fine and all of a sudden you're not making any sense. And for some people, like it's this slow thing that everybody in your family is like, what's going on? That doesn't seem right. Like that's not like her. Maybe she's not making decisions quickly. Maybe she's a little slower. Maybe she's not talking. Maybe she's not moving. Like there's a psychotic symptom that's called catatonia. Basically, you're like can look frozen, not getting up, not standing, not walking, not talking, like mannequin almost, right? That's a different symptom. Some people will hear voices. Nobody's around, and yet I hear a voice saying, you're a bad mom. And it's not my own thought. It's a voice. You're hearing it as if somebody else was there, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes people have religious ideas that might be rooted in your own cultural background, but they're all of a sudden a little bit more extreme. Like I've been sent by God to save the world by doing something that might be dangerous. Everybody's symptoms are a little bit different. So I would say like, if there's anything that you all are like, something's up, this is not my friend, my sister, my daughter, my wife, talk to somebody, because the things that make your brow furrow are like your warning signs, right? We should not just ignore this.
Yeah. And talk to somebody. Okay, who do you talk to? I believe there is still the national hotline, 1-800-MAMA, for maternal mental health hotline.
Wow.
Might have to fact check that. So if I take it out, then might not be there anymore. But there are resources.
Yeah. Yeah. In New York, we have the Postpartum Resource Center. Nationally is Postpartum Support International. There are warm lines and hotlines. So like there are warm lines and somebody will get back to you within a few hours or a day at most. If you're suicidal or you're hearing voices telling you to do something dangerous, like please don't wait for somebody to call you back tomorrow. Like there are crisis lines and hotlines and 911, 988, go to an emergency room. If those things are happening, if it's more than like the furrow brow, they're saying things that are totally not true, go right to an emergency room. Like, don't wait.
Yeah. And there's one, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but for people who are local on Long Island, there's Dash, which is a crisis center in Hauppauge, and a new one just opened up in Nassau in Bethpage. I don't have the name of it, but it's similar to Dash. You can walk in if you're in crises.
Yeah, it's Central Nassau Guidance, I believe.
Okay.
We'll check that. And in Queens, Zucker Hillside also has a walk-in crisis clinic. So,
And they have a whole wing that's just for maternal mental health.
right, they have a women's unit.
A unit, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is what I was going to say when we were talking about postpartum psychosis, and where it's looked at as women who do this are monsters. And you're saying, no, I could see how, in other parts of the world, there are hospitals, specifically mom and baby units for postpartum psychosis. Whereas here it gets sensationalized in the news as like, they're monsters who did this. How could they do this horrible thing to their baby?
Because we don't have the supports in place. In Canada, you can be hospitalized for no reason other than you need sleep. We can't do that in the U.S.
Wow.
In the U.S., you don't get to be in the hospital, unless you're a danger to yourself or somebody else.
Yeah, and you have to come from a place of privilege. Like, you could get a postpartum doula, but they're so expensive. Like, I come from a place of privilege, an upper middle class socioeconomic family, and I still couldn't afford a postpartum doula. So it was me and my husband doing the damn thing on our own,
And we're making some progress. Medicaid now will provide some doula services.
Wow.
They should be paying them more. They should pay them more, but okay.
Yeah, it's not the same as what a privileged person could bring into their home, but we're making progress. We have a long way to go. But I have to say, Megan and I were just at a conference and there was an entire presentation on social media, and whether we like it or not, and we happen to like it mostly, this is where people are getting their information from. This is how people know that postpartum psychosis doesn't mean that you're a monster. It's a disease like diabetes or hypertension, because there are influencers like you who are keeping it real, sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly, not just the highlight reels, because
Yeah.
that's what life is.
What do you do when people reach out to you for support through your platform?
Yeah, they do. I also run one of the biggest moms groups on Long Island. I co-founded it with the founder, Lauren Zambelli Davis. It's called Mamas and Minis Long Island. So a lot of people will post there looking for support. I just approved 2 posts this morning about somebody who thinks they have PPD or PPA. And it's really beautiful because the community will come together and suggest therapists that they've used, or we have a lot of trusted therapists on the group we allow to post and comment back. But people do message me on my personal Instagram, and all I can do is just bring resources to them. As part of my capstone project for my bachelor's in nursing, I worked with a local midwife, and my capstone project was PMADs and educating the patients. And so I put together a resource list, and there was a resource list for this hospital network, but it hadn't been checked in a long time.
Yep.
So I went and I reached out to these therapists and these psychiatrists or these psych NPs or NPs, PAs, and I said, do you have availability? Are you willing to call people back within 24 to 48 hours? And do you want to be a part of this resource list? And I put together that resource list on Canva, and I had to submit it as part of my project, got an A on that. But at the end of the day, it's about bringing the resources. So I'll literally send a screenshot to people, or I'll educate them about DASH or that new crisis center. There's the Psych NP that, I get emotional. I'm just going to shout her out. I don't know if it's allowed or not, but Michelle Sauls.
We love Michelle.
Oh my God. She literally saved my life twice since being a patient of hers. She went private. I think she is phenomenal. I think that if she's not able to take the patient, she can refer them somewhere. So I always recommend her. I recommend Helping Hands or Stephanie, like we were talking about. All I can do is bring resources to people and just pray that they take advantage of it,
Yeah.
Just had a postpartum doula on a few weeks ago. And like she said, it's like resources are her love language. And
I love that. What a
Wow.
beautiful way to put it.
We are very lucky on Long Island because there are a lot of perinatal providers. And even with that, it's sometimes hard to find somebody. We have so many good quality therapists and perinatal mental health providers, and we all refer to each other when we're like, don't have openings or we're not the best fit, right? Because
Yeah.
also I'm not everybody's cup of tea, right? And so some
Sure.
people are going to have a better relationship with someone else. And so we all kind of know each other and talk to each other. And I love that. And we have a lot of people, and still it's hard to sometimes find help.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you mentioned Michelle going private, like many of us have, again,
Of course.
because our healthcare systems are just not set up to take care of people.
For sure.
Behavioral health is valued and providers are paid. And I spent a long time in community health or corporate healthcare, and the people with the least experience have the biggest caseloads and the most challenging cases.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And no fault to Michelle. I love her and she knows I love her. And I send people to her all the time. And I just want her to know that I speak her name in rooms, because she was so helpful to me.
This is so moving to me because, I've talked about it a little bit on our podcast, but I had postpartum experience, a traumatic birth experience, postpartum experience 14 years ago. And then when I decided maybe 10 years ago that I wanted to do this work and specialize in perinatal mental health, I really thought I was going to have to figure out how to do it on my own because I had to find it on my own 14 years ago. I would call, I'd be like, do you have anyone I can talk to? And they'd be like, no, I have someone who can write you a prescription, but for PTSD, I don't know who you would talk to. Now, 14 years later, like the fact that I get to sit in this room, the fact that I get to do this for my job is like the greatest thing besides having my children and meeting my husband, the greatest thing that I've ever gotten to do. And just to be in this room and to hear, as you described, a complex case and you have full support. And not only that, you're offering full support is just this really beautiful, still complex, still not perfect web that I get to witness happening in real time. And I think that is just so cool.
It's awesome.
I hope you realize how special it is for people that you do share the way that you do. And also, there are things you don't have to share. I had this conversation with one of our therapists yesterday who was like, I should share this, right? Because we're a perinatal practice. And I'm like, you don't have to. We don't have to use ourselves in every moment. You can, you don't have to. You might not want to now, maybe later you will, right? Like I talk about my infertility experience all of the time, but it's almost 17 years ago. When I was living through it, I was just managing it myself. I was not an advocate the way that I am today. And you get to do that. But the fact that you are talking about things that people don't talk about, showing videos of things that nobody talks about, being honest, that is just so valuable for people.
Well, thank you. And I just want to say something. So I hear you. And like I said, there's two things that I keep to myself and people are so nosy and curious. I'm such a nosy person. I know they're going to want to know what it is.
Yeah. It's totally a foot pedal.
Maybe in time, guys. So I I hear you that I don't have to, but I will argue that I do. I think that as content creators, as influencers, as people with an audience and a community and a voice, I do think we have a responsibility to speak up, to speak out. I believe that you can change your mind. I have really leaned into that lately. And I say that to say, like in the past few years, like you get new information or you feel new things, you experience new things, and you can change your mind. Like specifically about political or social justice, civil rights, there are lots of creators who, because they don't want to lose followers, they don't want to lose brand deals, they don't speak up, they don't speak out. And I think that is disgusting. I do understand why people keep things close to their vest as long as they're truly not doing it to keep followers, but maybe they're doing work behind the scenes, which is what really matters. I'm all over the place, but like, I do think that I owe it to people to be honest about this. I do. You know, my husband will say like, you don't have to share that. And I'm like, babe, but I do. I think you can save lives by being honest about things. I was taught from recovery, the philosophy is like, go out and help somebody. Like if you can help one person, if you could reach one person each day, you've done your job. So if I can do that, and there are some days like when I got pregnant with my son last year, I was so sick. I was so like fatigued in the first trimester. It kind of masked as a depressive episode. And I couldn't really share that I was pregnant. I just didn't want to. We weren't there yet. And I believe in sharing that you're pregnant early because God forbid you experience a loss. God forbid you experience something. You want those same people you shared the joy with to support you in your loss. But I wasn't ready to share with the internet, and I kept that close, and I don't regret that. But you just never know who you're going to help and who needs it. So I hear what you're saying and I respect it, but I would argue what I just
I mean, I
argued.
love when people argue with me, like, honestly.
No.
Bring it.
Not arguing with you,
And
but just
and
like
I would
another.
I would just counter, like, you don't have to do it at your own risk, right? If it's going to be
I
harmful
appreciate
to
that.
you, if it's going to be too vulnerable, it doesn't have to be right now. And if
I
you
agree with
feel
that.
like I need to make sure that people know about foot fetishes, like find some other way to talk about foot fetishes. You don't have to show your photo album.
I agree with that. I don't have a foot fetish, but if I did, I'd probably share about it. But I know I agree with you completely. It's if I'm going to compromise myself, then I owe it to myself not to share that. I do agree. I also don't want to work with a brand that doesn't respect what I'm saying or agree with me. Like, we don't all have to agree with each other, but there are certain things that are morally, ethically, humanly right, and I will die on that fucking hill. I don't want to work with a brand that doesn't agree. I don't want to go work for a hospital system, whether it be Stony Brook or Northwell or NYU. I don't want to work for them if I'm not able to speak about things that are standing up for humans. You know what I'm saying? So if that's gonna, people will say, aren't you worried about getting a job one day? Nope, I'm not. I'm truly not. If they're not going to accept me or agree with what I'm saying, then that's not where I should be working.
And that's integrity, right? Which goes back to the beginning where it's like, that's your brand is integrity. But that's not even fair to say a brand. Or maybe it is, but that's who you are,
Yeah. And I don't think it's a bad thing. But like when I was speaking to my other content creators and like influencer friends, because I started a networking group because I realized lawyers go to the office and can talk to other lawyers. Therapists go to the office, can talk to other therapists. Influencers, we don't have other people to talk to, and there's like an unspoken competition in the industry. That's not my story. That's not what I like, what I appreciate. So I started a group.
Love that.
And so when I was talking to them, like consulting with them about changing my name, they said like, your brand is Nicole. So like, you don't need to be honestly Nick anymore. You are honest and people know that. So just be Nicole Tropiano,
Yeah. I love that you started a group for other influencers or content creators. Community is so important. This is why we're all struggling. Everybody's like competitive and not talking to each other. One more thing to love about Nicole, it's just bringing people together.
Thank you. I do love that. I think that I have a gift for that and I fucking love it. And if there's one thing I love, it's a new Facebook group. I just created one for the school district that I'm in, uniting the moms in the area.
We've talked about resources that are out there. What resources would you like there to be out there? Would you like to be out there that you don't see right now? Or have you already created? When you see it, you create it kind of a thing.
Yeah. I don't know if this is what you mean, but affordable care. So I don't currently have a therapist, full disclosure.
Unacceptable, Nicole.
I know.
Unacceptable.
I know.
We're going to have to do something about
I
this.
know. You know what it is? So like I'm over talk therapy. Like I'm just over, I go to my meetings, I talk, I have a sponsor, I talk, I have like people like sponsees and stuff that I talk to. Every time I go to therapy, it ends up being talk therapy and it's great. But right now in my life, I don't have an hour to spare that's just going to be talk therapy. Like I've been told I need CBT or, other coping mechanisms for the OCD or the anxiety. And I just haven't found a practitioner that has helped me or that we vibed that way. The last therapist I was with, like, ended up dropping like a political thing. And I'm like, absolutely the fuck not. And it kind of put a bad taste in my mouth. And I know it's not everybody. I know that I could find
Was it
a
any political thing or was like an opposite political thing?
Opposite.
Okay.
And I don't like self-disclosure. I kind of want to talk, but that's not what I need. I need CBT. And it feels like a waste of time right now. And I know it's not, but I want to. So the people who could help me with my OCD charge $500 an hour. And that's fucking ridiculous. I don't know if she's out there. She probably doesn't know who I am, but like, you know who you are. Like, that's insane. You don't need to make $500,000 a year to help people because you're not. So like, I understand you have the degrees. I understand you have to pay for your schooling, but so do I. Like you could be helping so many more people if you're not fucking charging $450 an hour. It's insane. Or even $200.
I charge a lot and I don't charge that much.
Well, sorry, no
To me,
shade.
I mean,
and I know it's hard to do the prior authorizations, like all that shit. Like I know it's hard. So I know why people go into private practice, but
in private pay. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't understand it.
Like so many things, there is a spectrum. There are lots of us who are in private practice who figure out how to do both. I'm really proud that I can say I charge a lot. And also we have some free services. So like,
sure. Or like a sliding scale.
But yeah.
Okay, so we do have to wrap things up. I wish we didn't, but we do. Our podcast is What No Mom Told You. What is the thing that no mom told you that you had to learn the hard way?
Okay, so I do have one thing. So what I wanted to say was like, it gets better. Like, that's what I wish that we could tell people over and over is like, even if you don't believe that it gets better, know that it got better for me and I know it will get better for you. But one thing that no mom told me, another hill that I'll die on. You see all these things on social media. These women give birth to these babies and they have their fucking makeup done in their hair. And they'll write, my little bestie, born Tuesday, May 27th, 8 a.m. Your little bestie? You just met this human. How is it your best friend already? I didn't fall in love with my daughter until she was 6 weeks old. And nobody told me that that was normal. She smiled for the first time and I said, oh, fuck, I love you. I knew that I had loved her, but I wasn't in love with her and nobody told me that happened. So I thought something was wrong with me. And that's just not the truth. Nobody talks about it.
Yeah. One of the best things I ever heard, my son was in the NICU. I didn't know what that meant. What does it mean when you don't get to hold him for 3 days? And a midwife, a friend's mom who's a midwife, told me relationships with your baby is just like any other relationship. It has the power to grow. And I was like, thank God.
Yeah.
She's like, your first 3 days don't define, or your first 3 weeks, or your first 6 months don't define your relationship.
Wow. Yeah, it's spot on. It's absolutely spot on. It just speaks back to like social media being a highlight reel. You're in matching bows with your daughter and she's 3 hours old. And I'm like, it's fucking bullshit. Like if that's your truth, that's fine. I believe you and I think that's beautiful. But if it's not really what you feel, I also felt immediately connected with my son, with my second child. But I wish that somebody had told me that if you don't feel that connection, it's normal.
Yeah. Because for 6 weeks, you thought something was wrong with you.
Yeah, and I didn't realize because you're not sleeping and I'm breastfeeding and I'm, even if you're bottle feeding, however you're feeding your baby, you're barely coming up for air. Your house is a mess. You're ordering food. You're hemorrhaging money. And then 6 weeks happen and I'm like, oh, fuck, I haven't been feeling that, but now I am. And then after you fall in love with them, you're beating yourself up for not being in love for the first 6 weeks. So I try to share that as often as possible. I definitely don't share it enough.
I say it all the time in therapy. Like they're really not that much fun in the beginning. Like,
They're so needy.
They need a lot. They cry. They smell. Like, I mean, okay. I'm thinking about, oxytocin and the good smells of the baby, but most
Yeah,
they
yeah,
don't,
yeah.
they're peeing on you and you have to keep them alive.
And life changes. You're no longer going out for date nights with your partner, or like, say it's a single mom, a single birthing person. You can't just go do what you want when you want now. You are keeping this human alive. Is it a sleep schedule? Is it not a sleep schedule? I mean, like newborns aren't on one, but it's like all of a sudden it's not just you anymore.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying it. You might not love your baby right away.
Yeah. And I didn't realize I was going to say that. I didn't, because I was really thinking about, I think that people do say it gets better and you're not alone, but the piece that nobody told me was what I just shared.
We really appreciate you being here and sharing this. And I know that this episode is going to mean a lot to a lot of people. So if you're listening and heard anything that resonates, you're not alone.
Thank you.
And we'll put all the resources that we touched on in the show notes, as well as, your groups that you're leading, anything
Thank
else
you.
that, we'll share our love language.
Cool. Yeah, I love that. Thanks, ladies.
This was so much fun. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for spending this time with us. If you found yourself nodding along or saying, same, that's kind of the point.
We hope you leave today feeling a little less alone. This is what no mom told you. And yeah, there's more where that came from.